change. Right, hi everyone. Thanks for joining. I'll just give you an overview of BEST and some of the key changes in the latest version, which came out a few months ago, as Paul described. And we have updated it and revised it and added a few new features. So even if you've been using it for a few years now, which I know some of you have, then you may find some of the new stuff of interest and use. So just for, I know a lot of you haven't even seen or heard of BEST or used it in the past. So just to give you a brief overview of what it is. It's called, the BEST stands for Benefits Estimation Tool for Blue-Green Infrastructure. As Paul says, it's free. You can download it from the susdrain website. Spreadsheet based at the moment, and it provides an estimate of the benefits in monetary terms that you can get from different types of blue-green infrastructure. We started with SUD, sustainable drainage. We've now included natural flood management, but really you can apply it to any sort of blue or green infrastructure. It doesn't have to be even water or drainage related necessarily. You can apply it at different levels, right from a kind of strategic program down to a kind of catchment or sub-catchment or an individual scheme or even street level. One of the ideas of it is to help engage some of your key stakeholders and potentially identify potential funders for schemes as well, because a lot of these schemes will obviously be developed in partnership. We've always faced this kind of trade-off between having something that's simple to use and is not too onerous for people so that they can take it away and come up with an answer, come up with a sensible assessment relatively easily. And on the other hand, it being robust enough to kind of pass scrutiny and stand up to scrutiny at, for example, public inquiry. So we wanted to make sure that whatever is in there is kind of defensible, and the outcomes you get are defensible too. So we know what lots of the benefits are. I won't go through all of these. We will come back to some of them, but we know, you'll be familiar with some of the benefits of blue-green infrastructure in terms of reduced flood risk, increased biodiversity, water quality, but we wanted to bring in the whole range of things as well. So this is just one of the infographics we developed quite early on, but I'll come onto these in more detail because there are a lot more categories in there than just what's on the screen. When do you use it? Ordinarily, we'd say, first there's a couple of steps. You want to understand why you're undertaking some work. So number one on the left there, you must ideally have an idea of what the options are that you could take, whether that's a kind of traditional engineering type hard solution or a kind of softer green solution or something in the middle. So you must have an understanding at least of what the options are that you could implement to achieve your objective, and also what the performance of those options would be. So to what extent would they reduce flood risk or improve water quality, etc. And then it's kind of around item 4 where you kind of start to use BEST potentially, and then use that to leverage funding and then implement the scheme finally. But you can actually use, and we have done, use BEST earlier on in that cycle. So you could, if you've only got a high level understanding of what you're trying to achieve and what the options might be, you could sort of do it around sort of number 2, I guess. It would obviously be a less certain answer and less robust potentially, but you would still be able to come up with a sensible answer earlier on in that cycle. There's actually 3 main components of BEST. So there's the evaluation tool itself, which is spreadsheet based at the moment in Excel. But there's also an options comparison tool, so you can run that evaluation tool more than once for more than one option, and then compare what those different options give you. So you might, for example, compare a hard engineered solution with a softer green solution, and maybe a third kind of in between combined solution as well. So you can combine different options, and we'll show an example of that later. And there's some technical guidance as well, which we've tried to kind of link to the tool. So although the whole thing together is quite long and dense, actually you only need to pick up individual parts of it as you're going through the tool. What are the key changes in the latest version? As I said, we started off back in 2015 in the first version with just looking at SUDs, really, sustainable drainage. It's now a much broader focus than that. As Paul said, we've included a much greater evidence base now, and the evidence in this area is always improving, right? So we know we're continually looking at the literature and the evidence base and trying to include as much of that as we can, and that's improving all the time. We've moved away from a fairly clunky spreadsheet to improving the usability and focusing on the kind of user interface. And also linking it to other tools, because we know that BEST is not the only tool out there. There's a whole bunch of other things that we refer to. For example, air quality and carbon, where you're using green infrastructure like trees and planting. We refer to the iTree eco tool because that's kind of best in class in that area. And for flood risk, we also refer to the multicolour manual, for example. So we refer to other tools and signposts to other evidence where that's appropriate and where we think we can benefit from that. The monetary values themselves have been updated, so they're now in kind of 2018 prices. Might even be 2019 now, but and we've kind of rationalized the benefit categories themselves. So we originally had 19, we've got 17 now, but we've combined a few. We've added a couple of new ones, including noise and traffic calming. We've changed the way that we present the results. So we've moved away from kind of ecosystem services and triple bottom line, although the ecosystem services stuff is still in there, into a more interactive results dashboard. And we'll show you an example of that. As Paul said, bringing in the kind of multi-capitals approach too. We've tried to simplify some of the information requirements and to bring in a core screening sheet, which I'll come back to. It just gives you, based on a very small subset of information that you could do literally in half an hour, you can come up with a course result potentially for your scheme. And we've integrated the guidance into the tool as well, so it's not separate. You don't have to flick between one and the other all the time. So those are the key changes in the latest version. This slide just shows you what the benefit categories are, so you'll recognize a lot of them. And on the right hand side is what's in the latest version. On the left hand side is 2015 version. Most of them are the same, but as I say, we have rationalized some, brought some together and added in a couple of new ones too. Most of them we have enough confidence now, based on the evidence that's available, to be able to monetize them. So I'll come back to this, but we can actually make the link between blue-green infrastructure interventions and quantifiable outcomes associated with those interventions and monetized values associated with those quantified outcomes. So most of the benefit categories in BEST, we can actually, with a reasonable degree of confidence, put a monetary value alongside those. There are still some towards the bottom here that we're not completely confident enough to be able to monetize them, but there is still quite a lot of evidence out there. I'll come back to that, but and I think the evidence is constantly improving too. But for example, we know there is a link between blue-green infrastructure and crime. There's quite a lot of literature about that, but to enable you to make the link specific to say, if I do this intervention, this is what the impact on crime in the local area will be. We're not quite there yet, so we haven't actually put a monetary value alongside that. This slide just gives you a brief overview of the what's in the how BEST is structured, how the tool is structured. So there's some worksheets to fill in, which are the purple boxes. There are some sheets that are completed automatically, which are the green ones. There are some information sheets. Paul mentioned one, the values library. So all the monetary values that underpin the tool, the kind of engine of the tool, if you like, are available for you to go and look at, and you can track back to the individual studies or scientific papers where we took that evidence from. And there are some more kind of information sheets in there as well. For example, double counting, because we know that there is some overlap or potential for overlap between some of the benefit categories. So there's a kind of check sheet in there to enable you to identify the risk of double counting across those categories. So I'll just take you through some of the key purple sheets, purple boxes briefly. So you start with the kind of project inputs. You can undertake the course assessment that I just spoke about. There's then a kind of screening stage, which enables you to focus on, out of the 17 benefit categories, which are the most important for your scheme or intervention. And then the one in the middle there, benefits impacts, those are the key sheets for each individual impact category, and I'll show you an example of one of those briefly. There's a sensitivity sheet in there as well, sensitivity analysis. I won't take you through that, but that's quite easy to complete and quite self-explanatory. You can also do some more detailed complex scenario assessment if you want to do that. I won't talk about that today, but that is in there for you to be able to undertake if you want to. And I won't go through the comparison tool as well particularly, but that's kind of separate element at best. But I will take you through some of these key stages quite briefly. So the project input sheet kind of looks like this, although it's in Excel. Chris will take you through an actual example later. It just gives you asks for some basic information about the scheme or the area that you're looking at. So where it is, the size in terms of hectares of the area, and so on. And we're interested also in the baseline as well. So what is the situation at the moment, and what is the situation that you're likely to be moving to in the future as a result of the option. So in this case, it's kind of separating surface water so that there's a reduced impact on the drainage network. And whilst BEST doesn't specifically focus on costs of schemes, it's more about the benefits. We do ask for the costs in present value terms if those are available. And that enables us obviously to present, include some of the results in terms of net present value and a benefit cost ratio. So you can kind of start to see whether an individual option or intervention is likely to be worthwhile from an economic point of view. So that's the input sheet, pretty straightforward. The course assessment I mentioned, Chris will take you through this again a little bit later, but there are at the bottom of this slide, you can't see all the boxes here, some very basic questions about what kind of interventions you're looking at. So for example, number of trees in an urban and suburban area, either as woodland or not as woodland. A number of properties likely to be protected from flood risk. Number of people living in around the area within, for example, 500 meters of the site, of the intervention site. So those are the kind of basic questions we ask here in this course assessment stage, and that automates this kind of outputs that we've got on the slide here. So there's some key benefit categories in the table, and a graph that kind of just displays those for you with some confidence bands around those two. So you can quickly come up with a kind of rough and ready indication of what the scale of the benefits is likely to be for a given scheme. Too busy the slide, apologies. This is around the intervention requirements. So what kind of information do you need to be able to complete an assessment in any of the given 17 benefit categories? So just take one, for example, air quality. All you need as a minimum to be able to come up with an estimate of the benefit in terms of air quality is really the size and type of green components in your scheme. So the number of trees, for example, or the area of green roofs. If you've got that, you can come up with an initial assessment for air quality. Ideally, you'd want to undertake a local air quality study and link back to the National Atmospheric Emissions Inventory, which gives you much more greater detail around what air quality is currently like in the particular location, and what are the drivers for that? What are the reasons? What are the interventions that you could undertake to improve air quality? But if you haven't got all that detailed information, you can still do it with a couple of basic bits of information, and that's the same for all of the benefit categories, really. How do we evaluate benefits? So it's based on this kind of, for each of the 17 benefit categories, it's based on this kind of impact pathway approach. You may also have seen it described as a logic chain, or a kind of, input-output analysis effectively. So really we're starting on the left from what is the intervention and what's the context. So context, we mean, for example, is it in an urban or rural location? How does that work? So what does it actually do? What impact, and then what does that change? So what impact will it have? What is the scale of that change? And finally, is the monetary bit on the right hand side, really. What is the outcome and the monetary benefit associated with that? So a very simple example: if you plant trees along a transport corridor that absorbs air pollutants, improves air quality locally, reduces nitrous oxide. There are other air quality parameters in BEST, but nitrous oxide is one of them. Can we quantify that? Yes, we can, using the information and evidence that sits within BEST. We can work out what the reduction in NOx is in terms of tons per year, and then we can link that to a monetary value based on government guidance around what the improved health and reduced damage costs are associated with that. So that's kind of how each benefit category works, and there's more information in the guidance. I mentioned the screening stage. This enables you to focus on which benefits are likely to be most important. So this sheet just takes you through the different benefit categories and asks some very simple questions to enable you to then tick on really, or click yes or no. And if you click on yes, then that you can click on the open benefit pages button at the top, and that opens up that individual sheet for you to enable so that you can complete that an assessment in that category. So for example, air quality, again, really we're interested in whether the scheme will change the level of air pollution. So enable you, and the three kind of screening questions we've got for air quality are: is it in an air quality management area? Does it involve green infrastructure of some sort? And is it in the populated area or along a transport corridor? If you can answer yes to those three things, then it's likely you're going to get an air quality benefit. If you can't answer yes to all of those, then we think it's likely you'll get an air quality benefit, so you don't open that sheet. And the same process for the other benefit categories too. So it's just a relatively easy way of helping you to focus on what the key benefits are likely to be. Once you've been through that, you open up the individual benefit category sheets. This one's for amenity, and there are some coloured boxes. The blue ones, you have to make a decision or select from a drop-down menu. The green ones are just for information, so you don't have to do anything. And the orange ones are where you have to actually put in some numbers, but there is guidance to help you identify what those numbers are likely to be. So for amenity, for example, we've got there's different rows. This is just a part of the amenity sheet, but one of the key things for amenity is, are people likely to see an improvement in the area in which they live or work or visit? So one way of estimating that is to look at the number of residents living in green streets. So, are there trees or planting within their streets? So what's that under the baseline option? What is it currently, and what is it under your proposed intervention, your proposed option? So, and as I say, there's some guidance to help you estimate what the numbers are likely to be. And on the right hand side, we've just got a start and end year. So your start year is generally the year after the intervention is built, and the end year is up to the end point of your assessment. So generally we kind of recommend 40 years, but you can go shorter or longer than that. So that's just an example of amenity. You can see it's relatively simple to complete. As I say, the the blue boxes are drop-down menus. So, and there's guidance on how you select a monetary value, and there's guidance on how you select the confidence scores. And the confidence scores is just around what level of confidence you have in the quantities. So for amenity, that would be the number of people or number of residents impacted. And what's the confidence around the valuation? So the value, the monetary value that is in the literature, and that is within the guidance. And we've gone for a fairly simple way of scoring confidence. So it's either kind of 100% if you're completely confident, down to 25 or 50% if you're less confident. And that just takes the proportion of those, that quantity or that value. So it's a fairly rough and ready approach to confidence scoring, but it does give you an indication of how reliable the final numbers are likely to be. The results dashboards, just briefly, this is all done automatically, so it just gives you an indication of which benefits are coming out as most significant for your scheme, and it categorizes those on this sheet in the results dashboard along kind of different ecosystem service groups, so provisioning, regulating, cultural and sporting. Gives you a breakdown in the bottom left there of the individual benefit categories, and it gives you an indication of what impact your confidence scoring is having on the result as well. So there's some kind of low and high sensitivity analysis. So it just gives you an indication of what the different results, how the results are coming through. As Paul mentioned, we've now introduced kind of capitals approach as well. So you can also, this is also done automatically, see how your scheme links to natural, social and other types of capital. So those are the kind of main output result sheets which are done automatically. As Paul said, there's some case studies available, and we'll go through one of these a little bit later on. 3 which were done originally in 2015, we've updated those using the latest version of the tool, and 2 new ones that we've introduced, which are more specifically around kind of, or less around sustainable drainage and more around kind of natural flood management and introducing wetlands and those kind of things. So different types of interventions, I guess, for the new ones. So I think that's just a brief overview of the tool. I think we've got some more questions for you now. So I'll hand back to Paul, maybe.
Yeah, so we've got 2 more questions. So now I said they're going to be getting a bit more searching. This one's still quite easy. Have you used the suite of best resources before? Yes or no? And while we're doing that, there's actually a few questions that are coming through, Bruce. One of them is from Matt Tandy, and thanks for the question, Matt. How does the tool link in with other economic approaches such as WebTag and MCM? Could the best outputs be used within other industry scheme appraisals, including SCRM, without the risk of double counting?
Good question. Yes, definitely. We've got a specific bit of guidance within the technical guidance document about how it links to FCERM and funding for flood defence schemes, including grant and aid. Obviously, that FCERM funding guidance has just been updated as well, so we need to, I think, update the tool to account for that to some extent. But nevertheless, yes, there are some clear links in the guidance, and we do link where appropriate, I think, to other types of guidance. So, for example, on flood risk management, we do say if you've already assessed or modelled the scheme, done some hydraulic modelling for around flood risk, so you know what the change in flood risk is going to be, and you know the number of properties, and you've used the multicolour manual for that. So you perhaps already come up with a monetary value. All you need to do is take the monetary value and plug it into best, and so you've done for flood risk then. But if you haven't done that, that's fine as well. We can still come up with an answer based on a more rudimentary approach. And we also say for flood risk that which benefits are likely to fall into which kind of outcome measures under the kind of FCRM funding approach. So how do the different benefits that you might come up with, including health, amenity, air quality, and so on, linked to that kind of funding approach for FCRM? So yeah, the other tools out there, you mentioned Envitag, I think, and DEFRA obviously as earlier this year, so just a couple of months ago, published an enabling natural capital approach, which includes a whole suite of guidance and tools and valuations and stuff. So we already use, there's a lot of similarity already. So there's a lot of commonality between what's in there and what's underpinned best. So I think a lot of the valuation sources you will recognize and will be the same, but there is a need, I think, to make a more explicit reference to some of the valuation evidence and the sort of quantification evidence that's coming out, because that is improving all the time.
Great stuff. Thanks, Bruce, and thanks for that question, Matt. We've now moved on to our next poll question, so hopefully you would have seen that. So, and you've seen the results, the last one about whether you used best, and the vast majority hadn't. So hopefully this presentation will help you, and webinar will help you take things forward. So this is, I think, hopefully a quick answer to a fairly short question, and this is from Sue James. So hi Sue, and thanks for the question. Assessing tree benefits, does the approach align with the iTree Eco, for example?
It does. We specifically link to iTree Eco for the benefits of trees. Yeah, so that's within the technical guidance. You can go and look at how we do that. There's quite a lot of detail around that actually, because it's quite a complex area depending on the type of tree, which we refer to in best, the location, and kind of, you know, how benefits change over time during the kind of lifespan of trees. So yeah, we do link to iTree Eco for that, because obviously we can't include absolutely everything, all evidence on everything around the whole world, you know, within best itself. So where appropriate, in that as in that case, we link to iTree Eco.
Great. Okay, so thank you for that, Bruce and Sue. Right, so just want to maybe show you the results for this third one in terms of, yeah, there we go. So it looks like most people said it's either useful or very useful, so that's good, and we'll get into a bit more detail about that.